Welcome everyone to our 9th Teaching Artist webinar. We are pleased to have you here today to learn a little bit more about how to morph your artistry into teaching artistry. We are so fortunate to be led in this effort by none other than Jef Lambdin, our ArtsGrowSC teaching artist consultant. Jef is a wonderful teaching artist, and I will let him tell you all about himself. Yes, Jef, over to you.
Thank you very much, Kimberly. All right, hello, webinarians or webinarians. I've never figured out how to say it, right? Welcome to the South Carolina Arts Commission's 9th Professional Development Workshop for Teaching Artists. And this one is all about how to morph your artwork to include arts education and teaching artistry. It's interesting, every time I typed artwork, my spell check wanted to make it into one word, and I didn't want that because I really mean your artwork, not your artwork. So, I've been struggling with the typing for about 3 days. Anyway, I'm Jef Lambdin, and I am a teaching artist, and I'm your host. To begin, I'd like to introduce to you the other folks who will be joining me today with all their knowledge and expertise as a part of this virtual experience. First of all, I'd like to reintroduce you to Kimberly Mott, the Arts Learning Director at the South Carolina Arts Commission. She's our chief engineer, our pilot, our guide. She's keeping us through the electrons today, and I thank her for all that work. Also, I'd like to introduce you to Hassan Anderson, and he is the coordinator of teaching artistry at the University of South Carolina School of Music. Hassan, raise your hand so you go to the top of the queue. No, electronically. Click on reactions and then raise hand, and then you'll go to the top of the queue. You know how to do that? Yes, there you are. This is Hassan, everybody. Thank you very much. All right. I'd also like to introduce September Krueger. Raise your hand electronically, September, so you rush to the top. September is not only a teaching artist, she is also an A+ fellow with the A+ Schools of North Carolina. And she is also the Director of Lifelong Learning at the Cameron Art Museum in Wilmington, North Carolina. Welcome, September. All right. And we have Susan Woodham. Susan, do you know how to electronically raise your hand? You could do it. All right. Susan is a teaching artist, and she was a dance specialist for over 20 years at Pine Street Elementary School in Spartanburg, and she is currently the outreach coordinator and instructor at Ballet Spartanburg. Good. All right. Today, we're talking about how you, as an artist, can expand your artwork to include arts education and teaching artistry. Now, we'll be doing this by having each of our 4 esteemed panelists relate to you how they made this transformation. I must say at this point, our 4th panelist, Mimi Herman, will be joining us a little bit later. She is a Kennedy Center teaching artist and co-director of Write-A-Ways writing workshops in France, Italy, Ireland, and New Mexico, which is where she is right now, in New Mexico, right? And she's also an A+ fellow with the A+ Schools of North Carolina. Wow, I thought I turned that off. All right, let me cut this up. Okay, now we've designed this event so that I'll introduce a speaker, and after each speaker, there will be a short time for questions. Today, your questions can be typed into the chat. You guys all know how to do that? Yes, participants, good? All right. Or you can electronically raise your hand when we ask for questions at the end of the sentence, and that will put you to the top of the queue, and we will see that you are interested in asking a question. Okay? So now let's go to my first slide, Kimberly. There we are. All right, please realize this is a 3-year project of professional development for teaching artists. We are in year 3 of the project, and this is our 9th webinar about the business of teaching artistry. Okay, can we go to our next slide? Here is a list of all of the other webinars. If you were with us over the last 3 years, you will already know that we covered many topics, and all the topics are listed here, right? Now, if you missed one of these, or if you want to bone up on one of these, you can go to this YouTube URL that I've included on the screen, so you might want to print this screen, right? They are all lodged at the South Carolina Arts Commission YouTube channel. So check out this link and you can find everything there. This webinar also will be included when they get to it. All right, let's go to our next slide, please. In our world today, teaching artists come from many different backgrounds. Some are artists who've become intrigued with the concept of arts education and arts integration. Others are retired teachers looking to utilize their teaching experience to shed light on arts topics. And still others are retired art, drama, dance, and music teachers who'd like to continue expanding the minds and the skills of students. So let's go to the next slide. These are our panelists today. Because of the breadth of the scope of today's project, I will be joined by these 4 experts, and you will meet them all again in just a moment. Now, I just want you to know, if we don't get to all your questions during the webinar, please feel free to contact me at my email address, woole@mindspring.com, with any of your questions. I'm always happy to respond. Let's stop the share, please. Okay, we have set the stage for our topic today. Let's begin with the meaty part. Well, please join me in welcoming to the webinar, Susan Woodham. Now, Susan is a teaching artist. She was a dance specialist at Pine Street Elementary School for over 20 years, and she is currently the outreach coordinator and an instructor at Ballet Spartanburg. Now, Susan, knowing that you have been not only a teaching artist, but also a bona fide dance teacher in the South Carolina Public Schools, as well as a dance instructor with Spartanburg Ballet, please tell us how you made the leap from dancing with dance companies to including arts education into your life. Take it away, Susan.
Thank you, Jeff. And thank you for saying that I'm an expert, because I don't really feel like one a lot of the days. I do feel like a hard worker though. And one of my first and earliest memories is tap dancing in a bumblebee costume. I don't know why that just sticks in my head, but that is one of my earliest memories. And dance has always been a part of my life. My mother we had 5 children in our family, and she, we were running all over town doing all these different things. And she said, pick one thing. And dance was my thing that I picked. And I loved it. And just did it for a very long time as a young person, until actually I went to college. And then when I went to college, I did not go as a dance major. I majored in psychology and ended up working 8 years as a social worker with protective services. And I went back to dance, found it for myself, and knew that there had to be a connection between that art form and students. I was fortunate enough to be in a modern dance workshop, and a woman who was teaching it, Joanne Graham, said to me, have you ever thought about dance education? And I was like, what is that? So that took me on my tangent of the rest of my life, which is, I'm very thankful to her for doing that. I began teaching. Prior to that, I was teaching early in my career, and I had no idea what I was doing. I was teaching a creative movement class with no concept of how to teach creative movement. I was trying to teach it like a ballet technique class. So needless to say, it fell flat. And I struggled with that until I was able to connect with those dance educators who were already out in the field, working and teaching. One of the things that I started doing right after I connected with Joanne was to get into some dance education courses. They were just starting the institutes through the State Department and the Arts and Basic Curriculum Project at the time. And I was able to jump into those classes. So any seminar, any course, any professional development, any master class, any seminar, any kind of training in town or out, in state or out, I went to, and just took as many things as I could. And then I started harassing people to hire me. I knew that Mary Lou Hightower, who is an art professor in Spartanburg School District 6, I had heard through the grapevine that she was writing a grant. So I was calling her just about every other week and making her crazy, until finally she found out that she did secure the grant funding, and she did hire me to implement that grant. And that was at Woodland Heights Elementary School. That's where I started my dance education career. And granted, now I began as a teaching artist, still kind of finding my way. There were no standards. However, at the time they were just getting started with the framework. So again, I kept going to courses and classes. And even though I was not a certified art specialist at that time, and I was a teaching artist, they let me into those classes. I don't know if they'll still do that anymore. They might, especially if y'all are interested in doing it. You need to call Roger Simpson and ask him to let you in. And then as time went on, I secured other grant work. I was teaching part-time at Woodland Heights, and so another art teacher I knew was writing a grant, so I got her to let me implement her grant. And then Pine Street wrote a grant, and I implemented that one. So I was kind of running around all over town, and I stayed busy every day for 8 years as a teaching artist. I applied actually for my job at Pine Street. I applied for it 3 times and got the job on the 3rd try. I was like, every time I was like to the principal, he was a friend of mine, and I was like, Tommy, you're not regulated. You can hire anybody you want to. But the thing he kept saying was, but are you certified? So I finally went back to school and got my certification and continued my lifelong learning. But in the meantime, I was writing grants for myself when I had no summer work. I collaborated with another young woman in town, and we had a program for over 20 years that we called Art in Motion, where we did music, art, and dance. We added theater at a later date. I taught at the Gifted and Talented Arts Weeks that they had in another school district. I taught at Girl Scout camps. I taught a day-long dance program where Girl Scouts could actually come in and secure their badges. They have a dance badge that they can get. And we made sure that we ticked off all the little bullets so that the Girl Scouts would come to that. I served in my state organizations. I taught at rec centers, at housing projects. We would have a little showcase, and we invited the mayor to come, and he would come and speak to the students who did the little showcase. It was fabulous. We had a little reception afterwards, and that just started with the grant that I wrote. And then Mary Lou, who had gotten me started in dance education at Woodland Heights so many years ago, had another grant that she had written through USC Upstate, and we were able to take our performance from being a little studio showcase to the stage. And the kids got to go to a college and see the university up here, which they had never done before. I also volunteered at my child's school whenever they had little like special days and they needed some kind of arts event. Of course, for me, it was dance. So I would throw myself into that. Anybody who would let me do anything, I did it. I attended conferences. I did PD for districts in my county and in and out of state. The other thing I did was I tried to share my information that I gleaned along the way with other people so that we could bring other people along, because as you know, you're kind of out there by yourself and you need to have a support group. So I really wanted to support the other young people that were coming along behind me. When I was running around the world being that teaching artist for those 8 years, and I was attending the CLIAs and being a facilitator for CLIA, I served as a facilitator for over 11 years. I heard Deb Hoffman, who was the State Department Arts Connection at that time, say, "This is really not supposed to be anyone's livelihood." And I was like, okay. So that spurred me to go back to school, and I got my initial certification and my master's degree. And I was able, because of all the work that I had done through those years, I was able to jump over student teaching, which was a trick. The other thing was I had tried for all those years to get the alternate fine arts certification, but they would not allow me to because my undergrad degree was not in the subject area in which I wished to teach, until finally this person came to the State Department and my advisor told me, "There's a new person at the State Department, talk to her." And I did, and she said, "Gather up everything, lesson plans, contracts, timesheets, letters of recommendation, whatever you can find." So I had to call all those people. They had to like go in the basement and get all their documentation for me. So I went to the State Department with a file about this thick, and they did not know what to do with me because I'd had all that experience. So that day they certified me in 2 areas and I didn't have to student teach. And of course, all the people I've ever told that to, all the teachers I've ever told that to, the certified teachers I've told that to have not been happy with me. But I mean, I already had the experience. So after all that, I've had a fabulous career at Pine Street School. Like I said, it took me 3 times to get the job. I loved it. I finally retired after teaching there for over 20 years, like Jef said, 33 years as teaching artist and dance specialist. And I really have not retired because I'm still working and I'm back to being a teaching artist. And I think that every teacher has an opportunity to be a teaching artist. You just have to find a way to connect with students. And as we know, it's through the arts that we can do that. I'm actually doing that now through Ballet Spartanburg's STEAM program. I write study guides for them that are
I think Susan might have frozen.
Yeah, she's frozen in my screen too. Let's see if she comes back. The electrons, these machines are going to make our lives easier, right? That's what it's all about.
Come back, Susan. Come back to us. Come back to us.
Amen, Hassan. Nope, we lost her. Okay. Well, when she comes back, we will ply her with questions and let her finish. But let's move on. Hassan, are you ready, willing, and able? Hang on. She just texted me something. Let me see what's going on. Okay, nope, not her. All right, all right. So let's move on. And we'll get back to Susan and questions later, because like I said earlier, we run a tight ship here, truly professional with our webinars. And please welcome our next panelist, Hassan Anderson. Now, Hassan is a professor of oboe and coordinator of teaching artistry at the University of South Carolina School of Music. Hassan, now you're in a unique position. Not only have you been a teaching artist and you continue to be a teaching artist, but also you are developing the first in the nation degree, which encompasses teaching artists, not just a certificate program, ladies and gentlemen, right? An actual degree. So please share with us how you got where you are, right? From doing your oboe playing and musicianship to where you are, and also give us a little insight into the current state of teaching artist training, which involves a degree. So welcome, Hassan.
Well, thank you, Jeff, and I'm so glad to be here. I have to just say that I'm at a very interesting time right now. I was just last week in Jacksonville, Florida, where I grew up with my mother, who is retired and thriving. But I'm right now in New York City, celebrating the graduation of my oboe teacher after 40 years of playing in the Metropolitan Opera. And so the reason I start with that is because I think it's just important to acknowledge that I come to you today on the backs of very strong women. And I just think that has to be said because none of this would have been possible without my mother, who sold her car to buy my oboe. And none of this would have been possible without my oboe teacher, who was the only female in the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra when she arrived there in 1977. And so I've been thinking a lot about the power of women. And so I want to just start with I'm here because of the dedication and the sophistication of power in women. And with that being said, I just want to pass it right over to Susan back. Susan, if you want to just take 2 minutes, if that's okay, Jeff, to just wrap up. Go ahead, Susan.
I don't think Susan has audio.
Okay, okay. All right. Well,
she turned on her phone because her computer got glitched.
okay. Well, so first,
go ahead, Hassan, it's all you.
thank you. So Jeff said we have 15 minutes, so I'll get right to it. So um, part of what I am doing here, I spent 18 years in New York City as a teaching artist. During that time, I not only taught oboe at Juilliard and Manhattan School of Music in the preparatory division, but I also started the music program for Weatherby Pembridge School, which was a private school on the Upper East Side. And so to really go back to how I got here is that I left Juilliard in 2011 as an oboe performer. And I was like, well, I'm still auditioning for, orchestra. So what am I going to do? So I said, well, I'm going to work at Starbucks. And one of my friends said, well, Hassan, that just won't do for you. So she introduced me to Melissa Walker at Jazz House Kids, one of the few organizations in Montclair, New Jersey, dedicated to teaching young people jazz. And I said, well, I play the oboe. How the hell am I going to teach people about jazz? They're like, you want the job? I was like, I want the job. So my first job was teaching about jazz and at a charter school in Newark for fifth grade and for seventh and eighth grade. I commuted 3 hours a day for 4 years. I used to call it the train to the train to the bus. So that's how I got started. And so much of what I wanted to talk about today was this idea of how do we go from practicing art to become arts educators. So I've written down 10 points that I hoped I want to just get to you. No matter how long I live, no matter what I do, will call myself a teaching artist. And so these 10 topics are really to encourage people to think about how do you go from being a teaching artist to the idea of an arts educator. And the first one I would say is have a workable, moldable definition of the term teaching artist. And so for me, I love Eric Booth's description of a teaching artist, a practicing artist who has the habits and mindsets of an educator. And so being able to have that multiple definition of a teaching artist will allow you to engage in positive conversation with the multiple constituents that you will engage with. That's classroom teachers, that's principals. Right now, it's for me, deans, it's my applied faculty. When I got to University of South Carolina, I had to do a certain thing. I'm gonna come back to that certain thing I had to do, but really have a workable definition that's moldable, that can evolve with the term teaching artist. The second thing I would say is that we really have to release oneself from what I call the tyranny of being certified. Some of us, because of our circumstances or time or degree tracks or experience, won't be able to be considered a certified teacher. But we should be able to be confident in enough that we can communicate with people that though we might not be certified, we have a complementary set of skills, which for most of us is teaching, which has the gravitas and the development to say that we can be in a classroom with students, with older people, with every constituency, very young children, and provide dynamic and engagement arts education. The third thing I would say is that it's important to keep one's practice pristine and you can provide maximum positive contrast to others. What I mean by that, one of the saddest things I see is people who are music education majors who are now working 5 years in the field and they don't play their instrument anymore. Right? That's something that often happens. So one of the things I encourage us as teaching artists to do is keep our practice pristine, right? That helps us provide positive contrast. So that means when it's time for us to advocate for ourselves, we're not saying, we can say that classroom teacher or that band director, they're amazing, but I'm still out there on the weekends, in the evenings, in organizations performing, right? And that's powerful, right? Because what's the difference between a teaching artist and a classroom teacher? Is majority of us are making our life through practicing our art. And that is so crucial to be able to have that positive delineation, because there often will come a time where we have to advocate for ourselves. I think the next thing I would say that helps people, I think, make a really great transition from being, a teaching artist to an arts educator is that you have to do the readings and you have to know the jargon, right? You have to know what social emotional learning means. You have to know Bloom's taxonomy. You have to have read the book, The Intelligent Music Teaching. So what am I really saying is that at our best, we all have holes or gaps in our learning. And one of the things I think that Jef has done is doing such great work is that helping teaching artists fill in the gaps. I want to be controversial for a second. If you are a teaching artist and you're not doing the readings and you're not staying up on current trends and you don't know the readings, you are not going to work because you're not being relevant. I'm gonna say that one more time, and it'll be the last webinar I ever get invited to. If you are not filling in your holes and gaps as a teaching artist, you're not going to work. That means if your district is 70% ESL, you need to get in some Spanish classes. If you need to learn how to play 5 notes on a guitar, go rent a guitar, learn those 5 chords. And so the idea of I'm always sitting with my music education colleagues and say, what do I need to be reading? What does this term mean? What's the latest trends? I don't know anything about modern band, but you best know I started reading on it, right? This is one of the trends in our field. So really, it's that beautiful idea in New York City subways, mind the gap. We have to mind the gaps and holes in our learning. Number 5, and this is really important. I want everyone to perk your ears up with this. We have to educate people as to what we do. They don't know what a teaching artist is. And we can't be so high and mighty or whatever that we immediately become offended. So one of the things I've had to do at the University of South Carolina is introduce, teach, and broaden people's definition of what a teaching artist is. Because as we know, we all do teaching artists differently. We might have different definitions. So really being okay with educating other people as to what a teaching artist does. And then that really important part, and I want to give you all something in your arsenal right now. Let me tell you how you always can end an argument about teaching artistry. This is what you say. I've only ever been in a place where the choice was between a teaching artist or no musical enrichment. The choice was between no music or me. That will end every argument that you ever have, because people understand that if given the choice that children have access to arts or nothing, they really don't care what you call the person. So I want to give you that in your arsenal. That will end every argument you ever get into. Number 6, I did 10 of these. Number 6, we have to think about what classroom teachers feel when we are the celebrity drop-in, right? So the kids are like, oh, the teaching guard is coming, Mr. Hassan's coming over, so excited. How does that make that classroom teacher feel? So I think one of the things we have to do is look for opportunities to build relationships and partnerships with our classroom teaching colleagues, even if they hate us. I'm going to say it again, even if they don't like us. Try anyway. You're only going to be in that school maybe for 10 weeks. You can fake it till you make it for 10 weeks. And I found that even in those situations, by week 7, they will at least smile at you. And then by week 9, they're like, you did a good job, the kids. Oh, thank you. Right. So we have to be able to understand that how we're viewed from the different people that we're working with. And the celebrity drop-in also helps us understand as teaching artists, we have to make sure that the kids that we serve, even if we're only in a school for 1 semester or a couple weeks, we don't just leave them. How can we continue to make sure that we are resonating and having some relationship with those students we serve? Number 7, we know that when we hear someone say, I've been teaching in schools for 30 years, that carries some gravitas. We don't have that as teaching artists. We're often in many different places, in many different locations. So I want to encourage everyone to think about project-based excellence. So we don't determine our value or how good of a teaching artist we are by years. We determine on how excellent our projects are. In year 2 of teaching artistry, you might write a song, but that's not good enough in year 5. It needs to be a CD. And what does it look like in year 10? It needs to be a multimedia project with all the 5th graders. And what does it look like in year 12? It's the whole district. And what does it look like in year 15? So we have to be able to take on greater projects, which are more meaningful, which are more disciplined, which shoot even higher. That's a great way for us as teaching artists to think about how do we deepen our value and how do we grow. Number 8, we have to really dive deep into what does great educational delivery look like. Simply put, what does it mean to be a great teacher? What does it mean to be a great teacher? And sometimes we are so focused on the fact that we're great artists, we are teaching artists. How are we checking in on how great our teaching is? And what are the mechanisms to make sure that's improving, that's growing? Teaching artists, as I lecture and I talk all around the country, the majority of organizations that we work for, they don't give us feedback on our teaching. There is not regular feedback, written reports, rubrics for our teaching. So if no one's going to give that to us, we have to be able to do that for ourselves. That might mean video recording yourself. That might mean asking the classroom teacher to give you some feedback. But a lot of teaching, I'm going to be controversial. A lot of teaching artists are mad because they're not being hired. But some of us we're not good teachers. I'm going to say it again. A lot of us are not doing great teaching. Now, this is a very special group on this call, so I know you all are doing great teaching. But we have to make sure that the teaching and the artistry are equal. Number 9, and this is where I want to get into philosophy. We have to fight very strongly against this idea that teaching makes somebody that music makes someone a better collaborator. Music makes someone a better listener. Music makes kids' reading skills better. No, that is not why we're here. I'm glad that all those are outcomes of music, but the music and the learning is good enough on its own. Let me say that one more time. The music and the learning that we do does not need to be held up by some artificial bullet point to get someone into Harvard or Yale. Music and learning is good because it's good. Music and teaching is good because it's a noble profession. So we need to be able to see arts as a tool, as a means to an end. And what are what are those means to an end? I'll give you two. We have to, in the final moments, we have to think about what is art's role in democracy? How is our teaching and our learning helping people become better citizens? And then finally, how are we thinking about art as a tool to increase civic engagement? How are we thinking about art as a helpmate to people with disabilities? How are we thinking about art as an intervention for Parkinson's disease? How are we thinking about art as a way to heal our communities and ourselves? So the final way that we move from being teaching artists to arts educators is we think that art is our solution to make the world as we would have it, as we would have it. And the final thing I want to say as my time comes to a close, and I always say this every time it's a group of teachers gathered, a life in the arts is still a noble profession. It's still a noble profession. So, you know what? If I'm going to be tired or underpaid or underappreciated, I'd rather be it with a bunch of teachers than anyone else. But the reason that Jef brings us together on these webinars is because he's trying to orient us to a different mindset. So before I go, I want you all to think about a couple things. The first thing you should think about is, what are the things that you must do to take your practice to the next level this year? The second thing is, have you fallen into a narrative around something that's holding you back? Oh, we just don't make enough money. Oh, that principal doesn't like me. Oh, you know, what's the narrative that's holding you back? And then I always like to finish with an affirmation. So if everyone could come off mute and repeat after me. If everyone could come off mute, I want everyone to say, I am kind,
I am
I'm
kind.
kind.
I'm talented,
I'm talented.
and there's nothing I can't do.
There's
There's
nothing.
nothing I can't do.
Let's say again. I'm kind,
I'm kind.
I'm
I'm
talented.
talented.
there's nothing I can't do.
There's nothing.
There's
I
nothing
There's
I can't
nothing
do.
I
Thank you. And so if everyone on this call will remember these three words when we have our most difficult days, or we're trying to make a transition, or we're trying to take ourselves to the next level, I'm 100% sure that when we gather later on this year, we will all bring back stories of success, stories of growth, and then maybe most importantly, stories of moving to places that we have not even imagined we could be. Thank you, Jef. Back to you.
Thank you, Hassan. All right, I think, Susan, are you here? I see you're on the screen, but it's blank. It's
Oh,
dark.
am I blank? Okay, I'm outside. I had to like leave my house, jump in the car, and drive over to the fret wall. I was going to Pine Street, but I could see that the lights were out down that way too. So I just came over here. I did pay my bill.
Okay. Okay, so everybody, what questions do you have of Susan and or Hassan? So if you have you can raise your electronic hand or type it in the chat. What would you like to ask them now that they've both shared their information?
Susan, I was curious if your other school district was the governor's school in Greenville.
No, I have done CLIA over there, but I have not worked directly with them through the school district of the governor's school.
Susan,
Okay.
tell them what CLIA is.
Thank you, Jef.
It's the Curriculum Leadership Institute in the Arts. And if you're a school that's a distinguished arts program school, which is a school that writes a really big document, that is the grant proposal, is called a request for proposal, an RFP. That school is able to receive $18,000, and a a percentage of that money goes to pay for professional development in the summertime. And teachers, classroom teachers can attend some of those, like the Muse Machine Institute in Spartanburg, or arts teachers can go to a variety of venues and places with a variety of courses. But those are paid for through the grants. Now, sometimes they have a waiting list that you can get on. And I don't know, so I might be talking out of turn, but that's how I got to attend a lot of those classes. Before I was an actual certified teacher, I got on the waiting list. And when I was offered the opportunity to go to CLIA or CLIA 2 or arts assessment or video production or whatever course it was that I was taking, I went. If you're offered the time to go and you don't take it, they won't ask you to come again. Or that is the way it used to run. I don't know if it still does that, but that would be a good question for y'all to ask.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Questions for Hassan? Questions for Susan? Enlightened comments?
Yes, I have a question for Hassan. Jef said that you had, I guess, a certification or a degree that you were that you designed for USC Columbia. Could you tell us more about that, please?
Yeah, so sorry about that. And Jeff, you asked me, I'm so laser beam focused. So we are creating the first in the nation is Bachelor of Music Performance with a concentration in teaching artistry. So that will be a distinguished thing that performance students and actually down the line music educators can have on their degree. We're also working on a partnership, I can't say much about it right now, which will be designed to also give people working in communities around South Carolina a teaching artist certification, and they would actually be enrolled in my classes at the University of South Carolina. It's in partnership. It's not public, but one of the large philanthropic families is very concerned that they've been going to high school football games and there are no marching bands. And so this has made them invest and probably be announced very soon a multi-million-dollar gift which will be focused on teaching artistry. And so what that will look like is people will either attend in the summer or the fall or the summer spring, and it will be 12 credits or 12 or 16 credits, and I think 12 credits, and you will have a teaching artist credential from the University of South Carolina.
Thank you.
Wow, welcome to South Carolina.
Very,
Good job.
very excited about it.
Janice, unmute yourself and
Yes, thank you. In addition to that, I just wanted to get clarification. Would that be inclusive of the other disciplines as well?
Well,
The
right
other
now,
arts disciplines?
so right now we are, it would be focused on music, but I do think that as far as this type of certification, it is something I could see it developing in other art forms. Right now we'll be starting in music, but I do think there are probably some other certification programs in South Carolina, but it also depends, I think, for where you are in your career. A lot of my students, they're 18, 19, they haven't been in the field, and they're looking to kind of pair it with something else. I think for people who are kind of further along, and I would say anyone who's been doing it for at least 7+ years, really, I would just encourage people to think about relationships and making sure that, I think that one of the things I have been personally doing in 2024 is that, reconnecting and recommitting to friends and relationships. And what I can say is that Auntie Karen Foundation, which I'm sure many of you know, they have received a lot of funding for supporting teaching artists. A majority of organizations I talk to, the need is teaching artists who are willing to commute anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half to rural communities that don't have arts education. So if that is something that you're interested in, feel free to contact me after this, but there is a need. There are jobs, there's employment, in all disciplines. Yes, Janice. But that is the biggest need I am hearing from partner organizations in South Carolina. We need people who are willing to go to rural communities. They're working to develop housing and vouchers for getting to these places. Again, hour and a half is difficult maybe for some people, but that is where the biggest need is.
Thank you, Hassan. And thank you, Susan. Glad to have you back without the power. All right, we're going to move on. Okay. Our third presenter today is September Krueger. She's a fellow with the A+ Schools of North Carolina and director of lifelong learning at the Cameron Art Museum in Wilmington, North Carolina. September, I know you as a fellow and as a teaching artist and a wonderful artist. And but you're not just that. You enlist the work of other teaching artists at the Cameron. So tell us, how did you grow to become a teaching artist, and what do you see in the artists that you choose to go with you on your journey at the Cameron?
Well, thank you, Jef, first of all, and thank you all for being here. And thank you for setting it up also with that question. I will say that I am a visual person, so I prepared some slides because that helps me talk and helps me keep on time. And I will say that hopefully I will answer that question along the way and share a little bit with how I got to where I am, because I thought that was also a piece of what you wanted to have us share with folks. And so I'm coming behind two incredible people. So again, thank you so much for this opportunity to share with everyone. Let me see if I can share my screen. And I will start with this. Okay, so I am a visual artist, right, in terms of my background. And I will say that when I got started after undergrad, I came home from school and I ended up locating a small textile studio where they were doing everything by hand. They were doing cutting, sewing, dyeing, printing, everything in one converted home where we were producing garments. And then we sold them at art festivals. And I include this because seeing this as the life of an artist was eye-opening for me after going through undergrad with courses that led me to think I was going to get a job in a company. And then I came out and found myself in this space with artists who were finding a very different way to make a living. However, this lifestyle has ups and downs, right? You're constantly juggling, and you may or may not have, or you need to discover all kinds of skills for figuring out marketing. And in today's world, you need to figure out websites. You need to figure out so many business solutions and constantly invent the art that you are creating. And so I knew that lifestyle wasn't exactly what was a good fit for me. So after moving to North Carolina, I went back to grad school and then started to do work as an artist in a different way. So these are just a few samples of things: quilts and printmaking and silk painting. Those are things that I do in my practice. But even in doing that, it began to develop relationships. So the print that's there in the center, that is part of a steamroller block printing event. You don't have that kind of event without relying on other artists in your community putting together an event like that. It's held within our university, and it is an opportunity for many artists to work together because the block is 5 feet in scale. And another thing in terms of the silk painting, that was something that I began to teach here at the Cameron Art Museum. So I am, again, talking through and thinking through the relationships that got me to where I am now and relationships that deeply involve teaching artists today. So these are some students that were in a class that I did years ago in our education center. So that idea of, as Catherine knows, what it means to be a teaching artist, where you are teaching people from so many different stages in their lives, and putting that into part of the practice that you do at your local art center, museum. There are so many venues where you can find a way to teach. Locally, there's a huge center called Dream Center for Education. And so where we have to have classes that are paid, Dreams has classes for kids after school that are available without cost to those families. And those teachers are also stronger when they have arts integrated vocabulary, because then all of the things that they are doing with those kids can also plug into what they are learning in terms of their specific grade level. And while I was also doing workshops and things like that, I got a job as an art instructor. So for many years, I was an art instructor at a community college here, but it wasn't in New Hanover County. It was in Columbus County, which is about an hour away from my home. And it brings up that issue of being in a more rural setting. So while I was there, I had a gallery that I was responsible for. I brought in artists, teaching artists to come in.
My headphones so
They
that
would
it didn't have to be
do-
out loud.
They would do workshops, they would exhibit in the galleries. This artist in particular also came through a relationship with the North Carolina Museum of Art, and one of the grants that they funded to allow that artist to go into different places in surrounding counties. And so that's something that right now in my role as a museum, we serve 8 different counties. So like you mentioned, Hassan, this idea of being able to travel an hour and a half and serve people away from maybe your home base, that can be really important, that you have that flexibility and also awareness of what is different about their community and what they may need. And in order to know that, you're going to build relationships with teachers, with arts councils, and I'm mentioning here a little bit students, just as a precious memory for me. That student was there in the workshop. You're looking at one of her pieces there that she did in her senior year. I saw her just a few weeks ago. It's a bad picture because I cut her head off. I'm so sorry. But she is there in the back because she is finishing up her student teaching now in Columbus County, where I was back at Columbus County a few weeks ago as an artist in residence during their Celebrate the Arts event. So I went in for a 2-day session teaching them printmaking, and all of those works were part of an installation where it's a county-wide celebration of all art forms. So when I think about that opportunity for her to see what it meant to be an educator and then decide down the road that she would also be an educator, and then this project in particular was using poetry to create the image that they were doing. So anywhere that I go to teach something in any art form, I'm always making sure that I'm thinking about what is the other core curriculum that I can build in. Students hold on to it, their parents hold on to it and value it. And then the teachers that you're there working with value that experience that they have with you. So all of those relationships are so important. As Jef mentioned, I'm part of the A+ School Network, so I became a fellow. While I was still in graduate school, I was introduced to this, and I didn't know about it at that time. I didn't know teaching could be like this. I come from a long line of teachers and principals and nurses, but the idea that art and core curriculum can be blended together in everyday learning, that was not something that I thought was the practice that teachers have. And as you know, Jef, being an A+ school is a whole school model, and it takes buy-in and building relationships across every member of the faculty. So Hassan, I thought that was interesting, the way that you mentioned going in and you're like the rock star that might be there for a period of time, and it takes a while sometimes for teachers to warm up to you being there, that celebrity who's there. But the footprint that you leave behind and the way that you encourage those teachers to build relationships across what they are doing in an art form with what they're doing with the rest of their core curriculum is going to linger, hopefully, and stay with them in a really special way. And so A+ was really valuable for me to understand how you bring it all together. So whether you do it through conferences, whether you do it through seminars, learning that language around what teachers are dealing with in a day-to-day basis and how teachers have to work together over the course of a school year, it's so important for your teaching artist practice. I have always been engaged with arts councils. So I was at school in the ECU, and so I was engaged with the director there at the Kinston Arts Council. And so those relationships and what they want to do in their community is so important. I know grants are coming up over and over again with this kind of work, but this was a grant-funded project that allowed me to go in, work with students in the community to design a series of murals that are standing in their park along the African American Music Trail. So who do you know in your arts council? Are you on their list in terms of being a teaching artist? And are they aware that not only you are aware of the discipline that you do in art, but as has been mentioned, how are you able to teach that to people of different ages, whether it's kids or adults, especially where arts councils are concerned? I had another opportunity to work in Kinston with Rochelle Middle School. And so this was a couple of weeks with the kids and then working with their portraits that became hangings that are installed there in the school. And so I love to think that day in, day out, those kids are seeing themselves in that artifact of the project that we worked on. We did a piece where the teachers had a PD with me. So whether or not that's something you can design as part of your residency, I am a strong advocate for how can you be not only with the kids in your residency, but also, even if it's just one afternoon, find a workshop that you can offer the teachers and see if they will find a way to build that into your time there. This was something, so my relationship with the museum goes back many years. A couple of times I've been involved in grant-funded outreach where I go into a classroom, we do work with the kids for a couple of days, and then they get to see their work here at the museum on a field trip to the museum. So thinking creatively about these larger experiences for the kids. This is time with me, with the teachers. They are making the work, and then they are coming and seeing their work here in the museum. And yes, even the governor showed up for that one. And for them to understand and value, right? For them to value what's going on with art, education, and integration is so impactful for the decisions that they have to make. So Duplin County is a rural county adjacent to New Hanover County. And then I was back in, this was when I was in Columbus County also. This was post-hurricane. And there was funding to bring me there to the students. We were making these vessels, and in the vessels, they were talking about their experience of loss and resilience. And again, they had an opportunity then to come to the museum and see their work. So those relationships are long lasting with those teachers and those kids, and again, the museum as a home base. So this is where I am now. And I am constantly blown away by how much we need artists, their creativity, and those relationships with all of the work that we do, whether it is artists who volunteer and they are here engaging with things like tours and conversations with artists, special events that we lead where we need artists involved in the work that we're doing with the community. This was an event during the pandemic where it was an installation about the 19th Amendment that year in 2020. But all of that is artists. Each one of those tiles is an artist contributing. So what idea do you have to get off the ground something like this that can be lasting and installed? Because then you're tapping into the community too. This was a project that people were encouraged to come by and visit at a time when we weren't able to see each other. here at the museum, we are always doing tours, and those tours involve arts integrated experience for the kids, whether it's a moment of conversation, whether it's a pre-lesson that we deal with the kids, or whether it's a post-evaluation. We do on-site PD with teachers every year, and that Closing the Gap experience is an opportunity for us to give teachers arts integrated experiences and also learn from them, what do you need and what's going on in your county, especially different initiatives that are taking place. And so that's what you're seeing here at the very end. And once again, you're seeing us on one hand facilitating aspects of it, but this woman here is a vocalist, musician, historian. She is giving them a lesson on the Freedom Riders while we are also doing an arts piece. So in that professional development, in a 2-hour session, we're able to have them go through the galleries, have an experience in our space, have a visual arts component, social studies component, social justice component, music component. They were listening to her sing, they were writing lyrics. I think we all left just full of information and full of relationships, not only with those teachers and, you know, with the teaching artists, but also relationships that the teachers build. And we try to help those teachers maintain those relationships afterwards with surveys and exchanges of information as much as possible. So, you know, I can only say that it's been really beautiful to hear Susan's history, to hear the breakdown in such a linear fashion of what Hassan had to talk about with 10 points. I think the thing I kept coming back to when I was trying to share ideas here was that relationships with people, how to grow them and make sure that that your museum knows about you, that your arts council knows about you. I've just reached out to all of the arts councils in the 8 counties that surround us because I want to know their teaching artists. So do they know you? And then, as Hassan mentioned, will you be able to articulate what you know about arts integration? And thank you also for making a nod about certification, because that cannot be a stopping block for bringing in a phenomenal person into an experience with kids or adults. Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you, September. All right, a couple minutes here for questions for September. Please raise your hand electronically if you want to go to the, or type it into the chat. I love the fact that you talked about community, community, and community, September. That's, yeah, Hassan.
September, just brilliant. I mean, you have such a lovely disposition and way about yourself, and I just want to kind of just maybe ask a question. How do you think people, just their disposition and their mindset can be a catalyst for everyday living or the work or relationships? But I mean, it's clear to everyone, I think, on the call, you just radiate this this real warmth and kindness. And I just want to know if you had any advice for us, how we can radiate on that level.
I don't know if I have advice exactly, but I would agree with you that in watching what it is like to work with adults of all ages and kids of all ages, that sense of warmth that you're able to give, approachability, knowing when and how to stop and listen is so important. And then be willing to share and generous with your how receptive you can be to other. I always think about, what is someone coming to me at this particular moment in time? Did they just have a horrible morning? You know, did something bad happen just on the drive into a professional development and it set them off kilter? So being prepared to be able to receive all of those different personalities that you might have in any given moment. Just be welcoming, be welcoming to that. And let your teachers, when you are in the classroom in that setting, I know I always remember that they are the expert in that space, and be ready to receive guidance, suggestions, and things from them, especially when you're in the classroom offering something.
I think September, what you and the Cameron are doing as far as professional development for teachers is commendable, because teachers do want professional development. They don't just, it's not just required. They want to learn because they want to be the best for their teachers. And so by providing innovative and regularly scheduled events for teaching professionals, I think is really something that you and the Cameron are doing well. And also, I can say that Kimberly, when she was at the Florence County Museum, did a wonderful job of consistently providing that professional development for the teachers in the classrooms. And what that does is that gets the teachers out into the community, and then they learn from each other, and then they're more open to having teaching artists coming in, and more open to alternative ways of learning and ways that they can share with their students in the classroom. So bravo, September and Kimberly and Florence County and Cameron.
All right. Great. Moving right along. I feel like we're having hit after hit after hit here. What a wonderful afternoon this is. Mimi Herman has joined us all the way from New Mexico. Welcome, Mimi. So, and we got Hassan in New York, and you're in New Mexico, and I'm in Lumberton today. Imagine that. That never happens. All right. Mimi Herman, right?
Thank you so much to Jef for inviting me, and to the South Carolina Arts Commission for having me here. And I'm sorry I didn't get to hear every word that everybody said, because I know you guys have been amazing. And thanks to all of you for being here. I'm currently in New Mexico as a teaching artist, so that's part of my story, and I'll tell you more about that as I get there. So I'm a writer, but I'm a bit of everything. I've been writing since 4th grade. I had a fabulous 4th grade teacher that got me writing poetry, and I only learned later that every 4th grade teacher teaches poetry because it's part of the curriculum, but I thought she was magical. So if she'd been teaching nuclear physics, I'd probably be a nuclear physicist right now. So anyhow, I've been writing poetry since 4th grade, wrote it all through high school, tortured adolescence. And then I went to a hippy dippy Quaker school in North Carolina called Carolina Friends School, where we did it all. We went barefoot to school, we danced, we played music, we did theater, we did Midsummer Night's Dream in the woods with the audience on the deck overlooking us. We did art, we had great classes. Anyhow, so I just became someone who did all the arts in my high school. And, as a tortured adolescent, I'd say it probably saved my life. So one of the things that I have done as a teaching artist is to try to recreate that magic in every classroom I go into, and with every group of teachers that I go into, because I think learning's fun. And I think that our educational system may not completely agree with me on that. So my job is to go in and help people find the magic in learning, in my art form, in other art forms. I studied creative writing at UNC Chapel Hill, and I've been blessed with incredible teachers. And from then on, my principle has been pretty much, if somebody asks me to invent something, I'm going to do it. So I get asked to invent a lot of things. So one of my favorite teachers from Carolina Friends School invited me to be a counselor and then later a teacher at the Duke Young Writers Camp, and then invited me and a friend of mine to create a new camp for high school students, a writing camp for high school students. So I've been teaching since I was pretty young. Like I taught in my sister's preschool. And I also taught at a girls' boarding school for a couple of years. I don't recommend it. Girls are not nicer than boys. It was pretty miserable, but I learned a lot about teaching and about curriculum, and then invented this camp with my friend. at one point I decided that I wanted to get an MFA in creative writing. And I chose Warren Wilson MFA program for writers, which is a low residency program. So you go there for 10 days twice a year, you do classes, you do workshops, you drink way too much bad white wine, and you go to killer dances. So I always thought that we should have to do a dance audition tape to get into Warren Wilson, because the dances were fabulous. Lots of Motown, lots of talking heads. It was a while ago. And so again, I had fabulous mentors. And a colleague of mine said, oh, I have the best job for you while you're at Warren Wilson, because we were only up there 10 days twice a year, and the rest of the time I was working for a living. She said, you should be a teacher assistant at this elementary school. It'll be great. All you do is you walk the kids to the bathroom and then you write, and then you walk them to the library and then you write. It was probably 2 of the 4 most miserable years of my life. And it's really hard to go from having your own classroom as a teacher to being somebody else's assistant. But I learned a lot about how I didn't want to teach, and eventually got the MFA. But actually, before I got the MFA, I was so miserable that I was looking for anything creative. And there was a 5th grade play, and they asked for volunteers to help paint sets. And so I'm like, I'm there. I'm going to paint sets. That's going to be great. And it happened that I spent the afternoon painting sets with a woman named Barbara Rhodes, who was the director of the Creative Arts in Public Schools program in Durham for the Durham Arts Council, and visionary and lovely and kind. And I see Catherine nodding. I feel like you must know her. And so she said, hey, have you ever thought about being a writer in the schools? I thought, oh my God, I could do that. I could stop, being miserable with this teacher that's torturing her children and can't read a weekly reader. Yes, I want to do this. And so she helped me develop several programs, and I started being a writer in the schools. And then I grew from that to teaching in Wake County, the neighboring county where Raleigh is, and for their program. And that person that was directing at that point was a woman named Linda Bamford, and she was much more rigorous than Barbara Rhodes. So you sort of got to audition, sort of the off-Broadway going to the Broadway, right? Wake County was Broadway. So I had to be a lot better to get into that program. So developed things in that program, and then went to the state level. And then people started saying, you seem to know a lot about what you're doing. What about directing arts integration institutes for teachers? Would you be interested in doing that? And I thought, well, that could be interesting. And I've gotten to know a lot of other teaching artists, people like Jef, people like September. And so I thought this is a great way to feature the people that I know are brilliant in their work. And so I started doing more of that. And then I started thinking about the Kennedy Center program. Do you guys know about the Kennedy Center program? So Kennedy Center has an arts integration program. And let me take a minute out to explain that when I first started teaching, I was teaching only my art form. Okay, so I was teaching writing, but I've got a puzzle mind. I like playing with ideas and connections and figuring out how this thing fits with that thing. So I started hearing about this arts integration stuff. And I thought, this is really kind of cool. Like, the curriculum becomes, becomes your art supply store. And you can say, how can I take this science concept and put it together with this dance concept so that people will understand both of them better by doing them, by getting them in their bodies. And I thought it was really cool. And about that time, the United Arts Council of Raleigh and Wake County brought in some very famous teaching artists from the Kennedy Center and from elsewhere. And one of them was a man named Eric Booth. Have you heard about Eric Booth? So Eric Booth's I think of him as the father of teaching artistry. And he talked with me, he talked with each of us individually, and he said, I think you really get this. I'd like to work with you. Basically, he sort of offered to mentor me. And he did, and he's become one of my closest friends and amazing mentor. And as long as I'm on the subject of Eric, I should probably say that his he has a saying that is, I think, the one thing that every teaching artist has to know, which is engagement before instruction. You get people interested, excited about learning before you start talking at them. In sign language, you can talk with people or you can talk at them. And teaching artists need to be talking with them, or even better, just getting it in their bodies, getting people engaged, getting them moving, getting them making art, getting them writing. So I thought about applying to the Kennedy Center, and it took me several years to decide to do it because the people who had mentored me were sure that the Kennedy Center would ruin everything I did well. The Kennedy Center has a very rigorous, rigid approach to how you do your work. And they thought that it wouldn't be very good for me. And it was grueling. But I learned a lot. And I had also sometime before joined A+. And A+ schools, I've been with A+ schools almost since the beginning. And so I learned a lot there by having to develop things. It was, again, people asking me to invent things. One of my favorite things that I invented was the Mint Museum said, we have an exhibit, an Andy Warhol exhibit coming in of superheroes. Would you work with high school students and get them writing about the superheroes they want to be? And we'll integrate that with the museum. So the one thing I would say to you always is, until you're overwhelmed, say yes. You know, when you're overwhelmed, start being more discerning. When you've got more work than you can handle, start being discerning. But you will learn so much by having to do something you don't know how to do. And that you have to invent, and that you have to read about and consult other people who have done similar things. So a little bit about my approach to teaching writing. Anybody ever seen Ratatouille? The movie Ratatouille? So there's this saying where the famous chef says, Gaston says, anyone can cook. So my theory is anyone can write. And that my job is to bring out the writer in each person that I teach, whether it's a kid or a grown-up. And that if I want to teach teachers how to teach writing, I need to get them over their own fear of writing. So I need to get them writing before I start talking about how they're going to do this in their classroom. So as a teaching artist, teaching writing, I'm teaching a pretty limited spectrum of what I do. So can you guys put in the chat what your art forms are or what your passions are so I can get a sense of who you are? Oops. So mime, what else? Puppeteer, great. Textiles. Visual arts, arts integration, great. Visual arts, theater, guide, and docent. Wow. Visual artist. Writing, storytelling, singing. Fantastic. So as you're continuing to add, I'm going to guess that as a teaching artist, as an artist, you know a lot more about your craft or crafts, because it seems like a number of you have a number of art forms, than you can ever teach in a 1 to 3 hour workshop or even a 5-day residency. It's just, you have this vast body of knowledge. And the thing about doing residency work, museum community education, great. The thing about doing residency work is that you're teaching from here to here over and over again. Or maybe it's like here to here sometimes, but you're not teaching the whole spectrum of your work. And so I call it leading a horse to water, you know, but it's really tempting a horse to water. What you're trying to do is you're trying to get people to fall in love with your art form. Okay, so if you're doing art for art's sake, if you're, as a teaching artist, you're teaching your own art form and not thinking about arts integration, then your job is to bring people into your art form and get them excited about learning it. If you're teaching arts integration, that's another kind of three-dimensional chess. So your job is to get people excited about your art form and also to get them learning something else. So I do a residency called Coming to America, where kids or grown-ups become immigrants to America in 1901, and they go through Ellis Island and they stay these characters their whole week. So they've got a ship's manifest, they've got immigration cards that say who they are, and they get to explore these characters in theater and writing. I've got another one where people write about science concepts. And I love doing residency work, and that was my bread and butter for a long time. And then professional development got mixed into it. I started doing more A+ work, and I started teaching for the Kennedy Center, which meant that I wasn't just teaching in North Carolina. I was going all over the country to teach teachers how to integrate writing into the curriculum. And the other thing I started thinking about when I was teaching teachers was that I wanted to help them rediscover the passion that led them to teaching in the first place. When I go into schools, what I see is some very miserable teachers, and it's getting worse. I mean, it was bad when I started, about 30 years ago, but now teachers, between, what happened to them over COVID and just the way that they're not really respected and not valued, it's really hard for them to feel like they're professionals. But nobody goes into teaching to be miserable. People go into teaching because they're inspired. They had some teacher that meant the world to them, or they loved learning and they want to instill that in their students. And so my job is to take them back to that moment so that they get excited about learning again, and they get excited about going back into the classroom, and that they see themselves as artists, as writers. And to do this work, you need to know the standards. You absolutely need to know the standards, because the other thing is, if I'm doing a residency in a classroom, I'm kind of stealing time from the teachers. That hour a day that I'm with that class for 5 days, they're not teaching what they're supposed to be teaching, and they can't get through their whole curriculum in a year, even if I weren't interrupting it. And they didn't always choose to have me come into the classroom. Sometimes it's a PTA person or an administrator. So my job is to help the kids learn something that the teachers would be teaching anyway, or to reinforce something they've already learned, or to get them excited about what's going to come next in the classroom. So to me, teaching is giving a gift. It's giving a gift to kids. It's giving a gift to teachers. It's giving a gift to families. I love to have a family night. September was talking about doing professional development workshops. So I always offer, I'm doing a residency, I'm going to be here anyway. Can we do a professional development workshop where the teachers get to play? Can we bring in the parents and have the kids that I've been teaching all week teach their parents and their siblings and their grandparents? So there are things that you need to know about being a teaching artist. I mean, I'm sure some of you are already doing it a lot, but when you're doing residencies, what I've realized is that any teacher who knows what I'm being paid thinks, well, I'm not getting paid that. How dare my school pay this person? But the fact is, I'm not getting benefits, and I have a first day of school every week. So it's a different approach. I sometimes call myself the lone stranger. I ride into a classroom and I wow the kids, and then I ride out. That's my job. A lot of my work has been in schools and professional development workshops, but I've also worked in hospital settings. One of the things that I love about the concept of teaching artistry, which came along in the middle of my career, I was just a writer in the schools. Then I graduated to being a teaching artist, but it wasn't like I was doing things differently. The name changed, right? But one of the things I love about it is that it's way beyond just schools. You can be in a museum like September is. You can be in a hospital setting. You can be in business. You can be a teaching artist in business, and that's where the big money is, right? So I've loved doing this all along, but there was something missing for me, which was, if I'm going into a classroom and I'm getting kids from I hate writing to wow, I can really write, I'm teaching the same 4 or 5 skills every week. You know, I'm teaching imagery, I'm teaching similes and metaphors, I'm teaching line breaks in poetry, you know, and that's great stuff, but I know this much and I love this much. And then beyond that is all the stuff I don't know yet. So my partner, John, and I invented something that we call write-aways. And write-aways are writing workshops in a chateau in France, a villa in Italy, an adobe in New Mexico, which is where I am right now, and a manor house in Ireland. And we take people for a week and we feed them fabulous food. And I used to be a bartender, so I make cocktails and we have great wine. And those, you know, it's sort of wonderful meals and drinks interspersed by very intensive writing workshops. And I get to teach at the absolute limits of my understanding. And I'm still trying to draw out of each person what their story is, what their poem is. But I have to think about how I help each person because I'm thinking about what their problem is and how they could solve it. So that's really been significant to me and I've loved it. And the other thing that's happened is that I was starting to think I was one of those who can't do teach kind of people. And then in January of 2023, I published a novel called The Kudzu Queen. And it's gone beyond my wildest dreams. I mean, it's been such a joy to hear from individual people. It's been winning prizes. But the big thing is that for the first time in my life, I mean, I've been publishing for years. I published a couple collections of poetry, but for the first time in my life, I am visibly a writer before I'm visibly a teacher. And it's caused me to reshape my life. So I wanted to say, so I'm saying yes, no to teaching more often and yes to writing more often. And I want to tell you this because the balance shifts. And I used to think you could just have a balanced life by choosing what you wanted to do and you would stay balanced. But the thing I want to leave you with is that life is like a tightrope walker, like being a tightrope walker. And every time you take a new step, you have to find a new balance. And so what I wish for all of you is to think through your balance every time you take a new step and do the things that give you joy and bring light to the world. So thank you very much.
Wow, thank you, Mimi. Aho. Anybody have any questions for Mimi? Either type them in the chat or raise your hand and go to the top of the queue. Delightful.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me, you guys.
Glad you're here, sweetheart, all the way from New Mexico. I can see cactus behind you.
Yeah. I'm looking at Catherine's question. Wow. Yeah, I think that's one of the gifts we get to give to the world. You know, we're the Pied Pipers without the rats. So how do we make the world a better place than it was when we came into it? You guys are amazing. We're lucky to have you in the world. And Jef, I'm so grateful for the work that you do. And I'm so grateful for the work that you are all doing in the world. Keep up the good work.
Hi, I had a quick question.
Yeah.
So I'm currently pursuing my MFA in creative writing.
Yay.
I mean, I've been teaching creative writing at the high school level for years, 20 plus years.
Wow.
But I wanted to get my MFA. Did you feel like it was did you feel like it was valuable for you to get the MFA as you continued as a teaching artist and an author?
Absolutely.
Or did you feel like maybe
absolutely.
I didn't need it? I just wanted to hear your.
What MFA program are you in now? Are you in an MFA program now? Sorry.
Queen's University.
That's a great program. And in fact, one of the people who's here on us right away was at Queen's. So that's pretty neat.
Oh, okay.
So yes, it changed my life. So the high school experience changed my life, my experience working with my college professors in writing. And it deepened my knowledge of craft in a way that is beyond anything that I could have done. And I saw it as an apprenticeship. I've always been kind of an autodidact, like I want to learn how to do carpentry. I teach myself to do carpentry, you know. But what I thought is I can teach myself how to do this and it'll take me 10 years, or I can spend 2 years in an MFA program and spend the next 8 years going even further. So yes, absolutely worth it. And I hope you feel that way about your program. I mean, programs vary, but I've heard great things about Queens. Anything else?
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right, thank you all. Okay, real quickly, if you put up the last slide, everybody get your print screen ready, because this is the slide showing all of the information, where to find these wonderful people, Hassan and Mimi and September and Susan, and I even put me on there too. So if you want to find us, here's the information. And now I'm turning the program over to Kimberly.
Thank you so much, Jef, and thank you to all our wonderful presenters. I am feeling inspired and challenged and all the things. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Super briefly, because I know that we are just a little bit over time, I am going to share my screen and share a slide with you and give you just a super brief introduction to something called the Canvas of the People. The South Carolina Arts Commission every 5 years or so does a Canvas of the People. So we go out, we survey, ask for feedback from South Carolinians all over the state, or even if you're in North Carolina, but you often work in South Carolina, we invite you to fill out the survey as well. This helps us to guide our strategic planning process. It's time for us to write our next strategic plan, and we would love to hear how we can best serve our constituents. So we would love to hear how we can best serve you. So you can either use your phone to take a snapshot of this QR code, or I'll also drop a link in the chat and ask you please to fill out our Canvas survey. It does not take more than about 3 minutes. It's not that many questions, but your feedback helps inform how we adjust and revise our strategic plan. So thank you for that. I also super fast want to show you our newest resource for teaching artists that are members of the South Carolina Arts Directory. And so if you are not a member of the directory, or you are not sure what the directory is, allow me to introduce you. The South Carolina Arts Directory is sort of a catalog or listing of working artists and teaching artists around South Carolina. And one important part of the Arts Directory is that we do require that our grantees that are within schools use artists from the directory. If they're going to be bringing in an artist in residence, for example, they would use an artist, they would be required to use an artist from the directory. So the way that you access this is you go to the Arts Commission's webpage, southcarolinaarts.com. You click on the left, you're going to click Programs and scroll down, please excuse the scrolling, to the South Carolina Arts Directory. So I'm going to click on that here. You can find out information about the directory, how to apply to be on the directory from this page. So you can do that here. Or you can also search our existing directory. So these are artists that are currently listed, and there's almost maybe about 300 of them listed right now. So you are welcome to peruse this. Again, if you want to find out how to apply to the South Carolina Arts Directory, there are multiple benefits to being on the directory. And one of those is, I'm going to reshare. Excuse me, I had to flip to a new screen. Okay. So one of, wrong thing. One of the benefits to being, I'm just flipping through all kinds of things here, aren't I? Too many tabs, too many screens. All right, y'all, this is out of control. Here it is. One of the benefits of being on the directory is you have access to the Teaching Artist Symposium. So the Teaching Artist Symposium is a new platform that we've just launched. It is a on-demand professional learning conference, for lack of a better term, for South Carolina teaching artists. So if you are an artist on the directory, you have access to the Teaching Artist Symposium. All you need to log in is your email address. You don't need a password, just your email address. When you log in, it looks a little bit like this. Welcome to the Teaching Artist Symposium. There are several options here. You can go to our auditorium, which is where you can watch professional learning sessions. In the exhibit hall, you can learn about national and state resources that are a benefit for you. You can save those resources in your own virtual briefcase. And let me go ahead and show you what that professional learning section looks like. So professional development sessions are here. If I click on that, then we've got several options. We've had some live sessions. We also have what we call Teaching Artist Foundations, and many of these are the webinars that Jef has done with us. So these may look familiar to you. So you will find information, sessions. Again, you can watch these sessions. I could click this and that session would come up. I'm not going to launch it now. You can also save these sessions in your virtual briefcase. So if there's one that was really impactful and you want to remember that session, you can save it in your own virtual briefcase. We are going to be continually adding to the resources that are available on the South Carolina Teaching Artist Symposium. We invite you to log in, take part in the Teaching Artist Symposium. If you are not a member of the directory, I encourage you to apply. It's free to apply, and we would love to have you listed on our directory and make sure that you have access to some really impactful professional learning so that you can grow your career. So that being said, I would like to pass it back over to Jef.
Well, thank you, Kimberly. Then if you could, someone has asked to put the last slide back up, and we will make a segue from that slide to the next slide, the final slide of the day, if you don't mind.
I don't mind. 1 second.
Yeah, Carla wanted to do the print screen thing.
Oh, no, wrong thing. See, this is too many things. Hold on. I've got like 7 PowerPoints up here, I think. It's too
like
many.
I said, we run a tight ship. We're truly professional with our Zoom presentation here.
Yeah, anytime you ask me to be the tech master, you never know it's gonna.
Well, you are our best.
That's sad, but hopefully
Here we
this
go.
is it. Here.
There it is.
Yeah.
Okay, and while it's up here, I would like to thank Hassan, Mimi, September, and Susan. You guys knocked it out of the park today. And I can see that eventually this will be one webinar that is viewed on a viral scale. All right, but thank you all for taking the time to be with us, to share your insights. You guys are beautiful. I love it. Thank you. And let's go on to the final slide, because I'd like to thank all of our partners in this, the South Carolina Arts Commission, the ABC, South Carolina ABC Project, the South Carolina Department of Education, and ArtsGrowSC. All right. If anybody has any questions, email us, get in touch with us, and we hope to see you soon, everybody. Thanks for hanging with us.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Yes.